Okay, welcome back to part two of Kashmir Adventure. And things are going to get a little bit hairier in this part of my tale. So, oh, by the way, this actually was 1971. I forgot to mention that earlier. And there we are up in the Himalaya mountains. I'm in a hospital in Jammu and I have just crossed a threshold of pain. And then suddenly, miraculously, the pain stopped. It literally went away, and I felt a lightness in my mind and in my body. And there was a light around me as well, calling to me, pulling me up. I opened my eyes and looked down on my body in the rumpled hospital bed. I heard and saw the doctor come running in and quickly examining me. "Goodness gracious me! Yes, stop breathing," he called to the nurse as several people came rushing over. I looked down on this unfolding drama with a tranquility and calm I had never known before, and I felt myself being drawn toward a light, a peaceful, all-surrounding light that beckoned me away from here. The doctor was pushing on my chest, trying to get me to breathe again, and initially I resisted. I felt I had a choice, to start breathing and return to the world, or to move toward the welcoming light. But I knew it wasn't my time to pass over, and I almost reluctantly moved back into the body lying on the bed and started to take deep breaths. "Ah, good, very, very good," said Dr. Gupta. "I have brought him back. Now see, he is breathing again. And it was only a few seconds, so he will be fine, yes, yes." It had seemed timeless to me, but apparently it was only a few seconds. There were lots of people, both staff and patients, crammed around my bed, now all smiling and clucking away at my miraculous rescue from death. Dr. Gupta's reputation probably grew immensely at that moment, as I'm sure that many times his patients did not recover in that primitive, unsanitary hospital. I felt better. The pain in my intestines was subsiding. A nurse wiped the sweat from my head, and I tried to explain to Dr. Gupta that I had looked down on my body at him working on me. "Ah," he chuckled, "so you are now another incarnation, are you?" I don't know if he believed me. I wasn't sure what to believe either, but I knew something profound had happened. Many months later, I read a book by noted near-death experience expert Elizabeth Kubler-Ross and wrote her a letter explaining what had happened to me. She wrote back, agreeing that I had experienced a near-death experience. This was a life-altering event, and it has stayed with me always. Perhaps it is part of the reason I choose such an adventurous life, sailing the oceans, taking risks. Perhaps it is because I believe there is something wonderful after death, but I don't fear it. I drank a cup of sweet tea and kept it down. I fell asleep, a long, untroubled, painless sleep. I woke to find Adi, the young man who had brought me to the hospital days before, sitting by my bed, holding my hand. "Ah, John, I am so happy to see you recovering," he said. "Adi, how long have you been here?" "Oh, John, I have come here every day and sat beside you when you were in pain and you did not know what was happening around you. I have been here at different times to make sure you are all right." I didn't know. I was really out of my mind. I didn't know who was here, if anyone was here. "Thank you. Thank you so much." He smiled and his head bobbed from side to side. "Oh, no. You would have done the same for me if I was sick and alone in your country, yes?" "Yes," I replied. "Yes, of course I would." And this was another life-altering confirmation for me that there are good, genuinely good people in the world who help others for nothing in return, just because it is the right thing to do. The next day, I ate some naan and a little rice. I was able to sleep for several hours at a time without having to rush to the toilet. Then a little more rice and soup. I could walk around, albeit unsteadily, with Adi walking next to me, ready to catch me. I looked in a mirror and couldn't believe the gaunt, drawn, thin face looking back at me. I was skin and bones and weighed less than 120 pounds. There wasn't an ounce of fat on me. My body had used it all to survive the past week. Excuse me. Part 3. Trapped at the border. Now that I could walk and keep a little food and liquid in me, I determined to get out of Jammu as quickly as I could. Adi told me that there would definitely be war. Pakistan would likely attack India any day. If that happened, the border would be closed and there would be no chance of heading back to the States for treatment for a long time. I knew that in my present condition, I needed more help and medical attention than I could get in India and had no alternative but to head west. I met with Dr. Gupta and he urged me to stay and get my strength back. No, I told him, I must leave today and get to the border at Lahore before it is closed. Otherwise, I could be stuck in India for months. But no, he insisted, you are still weak and sick. You could have a relapse and die. Then I'll take my chances. I'll sign the release form, but I must leave now. With Adi at my side, I stumbled back to my ward, took a quick shower under a thin trickle of cold water, and said goodbye to the staff and the patients who I had met. A nurse came in with a release form and I signed it, agreeing that I was leaving against the doctor's orders. Adi carried my pack through the winding hallways, out to a waiting taxi. He helped me in the back and climbed in the front seat. We rattled through the streets to the bus station. Adi found the next bus to Amritsar, and tearfully we said goodbye. The taxi driver took a photo of us together, and then with one last hug, he helped me aboard, tossed in my pack, and the bus rattled out of town, Adi waving goodbye until he was lost to sight. It's only 75 miles as a crow flies from Jammu to Amritsar, but it took 10 hours, down tortuous, twisting roads, stopping at little villages to load and unload passengers and livestock. I felt weak, but exhilarated, glad to be out of the hospital from hell, hoping to get to the border before it was closed. We bumped and jostled into Amritsar, the golden city of the Sikhs, at dusk. As I staggered down from the bus, I was surrounded by a dozen ragged urchins, each assuring me they represented, the best hotel, very cheap, very clean. Also, the best young virgins, very cheap, very clean. I chose one little boy to lead me to a hotel, and after a few minutes' walk, we entered a courtyard. I looked at the small room, paid a few rupees, and lay down on the tattered blanket. After sleeping for a couple hours, I ventured out to find food. This is a sacred town, renowned for the famous Golden Temple, the holiest shrine of the Sikhs. I walked a little way to a small restaurant where I was viewed suspiciously. I sat down and ordered naan bread and soup. Soon I was surrounded by a gang of young beggars demanding money. I quickly ate my food, threw a few rupees on the street and left as fast as I could, while they scrambled to pick up the coins. I slept a few more hours. Then, foregoing my chance to see the temple, I got the first bus, heading west down the Grand Trunk Road. It's less than 20 miles from Amritsar to the outskirts of Lahore, the first city in Pakistan. I talked to people on the bus who told me that Pakistan had lobbed more shells into India a couple of nights ago. They feared war would break out any day, perhaps any hour. No one knew if the border would still be open. The bus stopped at the border post on the Indian side. We all got out. The bus picked up a few passengers and then slowly trundled back toward Amritsar. Next to the road was a small collection of huts and some tables outside in the stifling heat under green camouflaged army tents. A dozen severe-looking Sikhs in army uniforms sat behind the tables, and one waved me over. He looked me up and down and apparently didn't like what he saw. I didn't blame him. My hair was long and wild, my beard was matted and straggly, I was emaciated and pale, my clothes hung off me, and I didn't smell that great. "Is the border still open, sir?" I asked respectfully. "Passport and border pass," he barked at me. Oops. I gave him my passport, but didn't know what he meant by border pass. "What border pass, sir?" "The paper you were given when you entered India, that border pass. Where is it?" he responded curtly. I frantically looked through my wallet, my passport, turned everything out of my pack. I don't have it, sir. I must have lost it when I was in hospital. Then you will have to go back to Delhi and try to get another one, then come back here, he said disinterestedly. But that would take days and the border could be closed. I'm sick. I've been in hospital in Jammu and I must get home for medical attention, I beseeched. No, you cannot cross the border without your pass. Now go away. And I was dismissed. I moved outside, angry at this rude man, scared that I wouldn't be able to get out of India for months. I sat down near the tents and stared into space. What could I do? Sneaking across was out of the question. There was a no-man's land about a quarter-mile wide, and each side was covered by soldiers with machine guns. At night, there were giant spotlights, which now sat darkened along the border. I rested in the shade of a huge banyan tree, trying to come up with a plan. Could I forge a border pass? Could I hide in the back of a vehicle? Could I bribe someone? This seemed the most likely choice, and I was counting my little money when a shadow loomed over me. It was an army officer, another Sikh. His beard neatly plaited, his hair, which traditionally had never been cut, looped inside his scarlet turban. He wore a crisp uniform and carried a swagger stick under his arm, like British officers of old. His olive skin glistened in the sun. "What is your problem, sir?" he asked kindly. I explained what had happened and how I was dismissed rudely and told to return to Delhi. He looked over my passport, put it in his pocket, and told me to wait there. He strode off purposefully toward the largest hut. I was alarmed because he had my passport, without which I was really stuck. Half an hour later, he came back and ordered me to follow him. We walked into the hut, where a clerk stamped my passport. Then 2 Indian soldiers came in, and they each grabbed one of my arms in a vice-like grip. A third soldier took my backpack. Outside, 4 more soldiers were lined up, with rifles pointed at me. I didn't know what was happening, but for a second thought I was going to be shot right there. Then 2 of the soldiers moved in front of me and 2 took positions behind. With my arms pinned to my side, the 7 soldiers marched this hippie a quarter of a mile down the road to where a red and white striped barrier defined the border between the soon-to-be warring nations of India and Pakistan. With their rifles still aimed at me, the 4 soldiers moved back, and the 2 holding my arms let go. I was handed my backpack and told to wait until the barrier was raised and then walk across. I turned around and looked back down the road. Standing afar was the kind Sikh officer who had arranged my escort to the border. I stood to attention and gave him a rigid salute. He tapped the brim of his hat with his swagger stick, smiled, and went into his hut. I turned at the sound of marching boots coming from the Pakistani side. 6 soldiers were hurrying toward the barrier, bayonets on their rifles pointed at me. The gate was raised and I walked over, my pack on my back, my hands in the air. The same formation, 2 in front, 1 on either side, 2 behind. Frog marched me into Pakistan. Preliminaries at the border, inspection and stamping of my passport, and then I was shown into a small hut where a short, self-important army officer sat behind a big desk. "So, you have been in Jammu for a while. What armaments did you see? How many soldiers? What is their attitude? Do they have many guns? How many trucks? How many tanks? How many missiles?" I was shocked. It seems the reason the Pakistanis allowed me across the border was to interrogate me about their enemy. Now, I had grown to like the Indian people very much. Their kindness and generosity had helped me many times. I had experienced problems traveling through Pakistan on the way east, and their war fever and rage had alarmed me all those weeks ago. "Sir," I replied, "I appreciate your helping me to get across the border, but I spent my time in Jammu in a hospital. I have no idea what the state of the Indian army is there, and I left at night, so did not see any artillery or guns." This was not true, but I wasn't going to tell him the Indians had lots of brand new Chinese-made weaponry aimed right at Lahore. Let them get their own spies. He drummed his fingers on the table and scowled at me. I didn't know if he would order me back across the border, but he told me brusquely to get out and leave Lahore now. I was only too happy to do that, grabbed my pack, and walked as quickly as I could toward the town. I flagged down a rickshaw and headed right to the bus station. There I boarded a bus for Peshawar, the town on the Pakistan-Afghan border. I couldn't wait to get out of Pakistan, back to my friend Abdullah and his family in Herat. As the bus finally filled with passengers and chickens and lurched off west, I contemplated the thousands of miles ahead of me. But that's another story or two. Well, in fact, next week I'm going to continue the story across Asia. How did I get back to the West and get some medical treatment that I needed when I was pretty sick? So I hope you enjoyed that. Tune in next Sunday. Subscribe to my YouTube page if you like, my channel, and like this, and I hope you enjoy it. And most importantly, be careful, be safe, be well, stay home. It's Captain John signing off. Little River, Nova Scotia.